All right, guys, we are live. This is the podcast, Straightforward Podcast. We are with Mr. Troy Casey today. We connected. Actually, it's a funny story how we connected. He was at a restaurant in the area where I live, and one of my best friends was chatting with him and was like, "Hey, you got to do a podcast with Kyle." And Mr. Casey here was willing enough to come on. So I'm actually really appreciative that you're willing to hop on, dude. I'm super excited about this. I've been watching your stuff for a long time. I love the content you put out because you're actually really helping people. And what I was about to say before we did this, when we jumped live, was I was talking to my friends the other day about just how easy it has been to actually make improvements in the government and with health and nutrition with like a few decisions. It's like, what has taken us this long? Like, I don't know. And it's pretty obvious when you really start to like peel back the layers.
Money, it's business, it's greed, it's human avarice. It's my mentor likes to say, Luke Skywalker needs a Darth Vader, right? So the dark side is part of our dualistic paradox that we live here on planet Earth. And so, as much as I don't like the dark side, I mean, if it wasn't there, we wouldn't know what the light is, right?
100%. 100%. Yeah. So, okay. So what I would like to start with is I'd like to hear a little bit about your story, because as much as I follow you on Instagram and I have some questions I really want to ask. There's one in particular which I'm sure you get asked a lot, but I'd love for you to tell people like who are you? Like what are your credentials? How'd you get into this? I know you have a story of like going through some health issues and that really kind of pushed you into this whole world. So as much as you're willing, I'd love to hear a little bit about your story.
Yeah, sure. And thanks for having me on as well, Kyle. I love this. I thought we were going to do it in person in Atlanta, but
I wanted to so bad.
we're here now. So that's all that matters. And so, a big part of my awakening started in 1989. I was in Milan, Italy. I was a Versace model. I was starting my career out, and I was bloating. I had digestive issues. I had asthma years before that, and it would kind of come and go. And I knew nothing about nutrition. I knew nothing about health. I was just a young man growing up in the 70s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. And I had my childhood shots, and but they weren't as dramatic after the 1986 Act, which the viewers can look up. The 1986 Act exonerated these shot manufacturing companies from any liability, and this has never happened in the history of business. So, for example, I just bought a new car. If that car blows up, the manufacturer is responsible to one degree or another.
Right.
And so even before Ralph Nader got involved with consumer protection, seatbelts were a big thing. Now everything comes equipped with airbags, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a certain level of safety and efficacy that you want in anything that you're manufacturing. And lo and behold, the 1986 Act exonerated liability from any of these manufacturers. And so never in the history of business has this been done. And so RFK's got a line in the sand for the EPA. Glyphosate and GMOs were introduced right around that period as well.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, RFK's research shows that there are no efficacy to the shots or safety or efficacy. There's never been any research done on that. And all the Harvard and Yale data proves to that. It also points out the direction that autoimmune issues are subsequent to that. And you should have your editor make sure that you are editing this properly, because it can get censored, especially on YouTube, this conversation. Hopefully we didn't say too many triggering words, but so the childhood shots are basically, according to RFK and all his data on the Harvard and Yale research, it shows no efficacy or safety. And his conclusion is it maims children and makes human beings subscription models for the drugs, the pharmaceutical drugs, autoimmune, asthma, all sorts of issues. And so when I was younger, I had digestive issues. First of all, if you look in my baby book, right after my injections as a child, I would get ear infections. So then ear infections, then they would give me antibiotics. And we all know now what that does to the gut microbiome.
Mm-hmm.
So fast forward, a couple decades later, I'm a young man. I'm sitting in Milan. I've got digestive problems. I go out, I keep myself in shape, but I go out and I bloat, pizza, beer, this, that, and the other thing. Years later, I realized I was gluten intolerant, or that was a major inflammatory trigger for me.
Right.
And so instantly I'm in Milan. I'm doing my best for my career. I'm a young man. I'm given the old collegiate spirit. And this industry is pretty interesting because it's very gate kept. We see this a little bit with the Diddy parties coming out right now,
Oh, yeah.
but that's kind of the element.
Yeah.
Like it's like sex, pay per play, gatekeeping. It's like if you're going to play games and then you'll get advanced. But if you're not going to play games,
Yep.
I don't kiss ass or suck dick. So, I only got so far, right? And
Yeah.
so the bottom line is I was bloating. I had issues. I went down to the English bookstore because I knew nothing about nutrition, and I started reading the literature. And I found herbal medicine, fasting, internal purification, juicing, natural food. And I was living in Italy, and I started shopping at the farmers markets. They were abundant in Italy. Like food's really a big thing in Italy. And so I started eating only whole foods, fruits and vegetables, etc. And I got results immediately in the mirror and in the toilet bowl.
Yeah, go
And I was
figure.
like, wow, I was hooked. So that was 35 years ago. And since then, I had a rock star phase. So I had some spiritual, mental, emotional issues that I had, drinking, alcoholism, doing too much drugs in that industry.
Yeah.
So I had to clean up myself from that. I found Vipassana meditation. I started working with indigenous healers from around the world, Maori from New Zealand, the Lakota here in the United States, and the Shipibo in the Amazon rainforest. And I started drinking ayahuasca with the Shipibo. That was another part of my awakening. And when I sobered up from my my modeling days, from my rock star phase, if you will, I found Vipassana meditation, SN Goenka. These are 10-day courses of meditation in silence. And really, this is where the rubber meets the spiritual road, right? Because you sit with yourself for 10 days in silence, no talking. You really see what your mind is made of. And mind is an embodied process. So we are the sum total of our ideas coagulated into our tissues. And so it's been quite the process that I've gone through and series of awakenings through there. But that's the essence of my journey.
Okay, so I have two follow-up questions. We'll have one statement to make. One, saying you were a Versace model is such a flex. That's crazy. Are you Italian?
I'm still a Versace model, actually. I was a 4-time Versace model.
Hey,
But,
yo, let's go. That's awesome.
once a Versace model, always a Versace model. I am not Italian. I have Irish descent, but I'm pure red-blooded American, baby.
Let's go. Okay, so my follow-up question was, so how do you say that? Vipassana? Am I saying that correctly?
Vipassana meditation, yes.
Okay, so when you did that meditation, and how many times did you do it throughout the course of your life so far? Have you done it a few times?
I've sat 11 courses in silence, so about 111 days in silence altogether. I did the majority of that over 6 years, from 1999 when I sobered up to about 2005, and I was meditating 2 hours a day, pretty religiously.
Okay. While you were in that experience, I would love for you to share like what happens in that, because I've never done anything like that, and I'd venture to say most of the audience has never done anything like that, where you just sit in silence and let the brain do what it does, and you're monitoring your thoughts. And like, what was that like? What did you come away from it with?
Well, a lot. I mean, it was the main catalyst for the biggest part of my awakening, which was going from the material world as a model, drinking, traveling, sex, drugs, rock and roll, etc., to awakening that the world had something different to offer me.
Yeah.
My spirit was awakened ultimately, and so it was the hardest thing that I ever did mentally and physically. Physically, it was arduous. You would think it's just a walk in the park and it's a meditation retreat. Oh, it's all fun and games or relaxation. The fact of the matter is the mind stores tension in the body. And when you're going through the sensations of the body, those ancient thoughts are released. The trauma gets released. And so at one point, my femur felt like it dislocated from my hip. I had so much pain in there. I also heard some of the older guys, they were like, I was meditating, and then I asked the teacher if I could sit against the wall as if it was going to get better then, or sit in a chair. And sure enough, nothing worked. They still had to go through it. One guy said that he had like an 800-pound gorilla on his back riding him for days, and finally it popped. And so I felt my femur pop out of my hip and my shoulder pop out as well, during these courses. So the mind has these mental defilements, these oftentimes mimetic virus. I do believe Christopher Dawkins coined that term. They're memes with values attached, ideas with values attached. Memes are no good for the genes, right? So an idea is something like as good as milk is good food, right? This is the number one advertising campaign of all times in the world, right? And what they were selling is subsidized, government subsidized, injected RSBT injected, antibiotic, corn-fed cow milk that wasn't Jersey cow, right? So they're selling garbage milk, and milk is good food. Or same could be said about Coca-Cola. Or premarital sex is bad for you, right? According to the religions, which I do believe has some application. The bottom line is the memes, you are the sum total of your ideas. So these mental defilements, good or bad, show up in your tissues. And so there you are sitting with yourself, not necessarily ruminating on your ideas, but going through them. You could ruminate for days on your ideas. The idea is to meditate on the bodily sensations. This is what Vipassana is, mindful meditation, insight meditation. And so the bottom line is I would just feel like truckloads of garbage relieved from my body and consciousness when I would leave these meditation courses. And again, I was so hooked. It was amazing. Hardest thing I did ever, physically and mentally. I think it's a great rites of passage for anyone listening out there. They are donation basis, so potentially they're free if you don't have any money. There's 4 centers or maybe 6 centers now in the United States of America. So there's no excuse not to do it. It's an incredible experience. It's definitely what I recommend before people start doing psychedelic journeys, right? You want a spiritual ballast. You want something that's real holistic and organic as a platform on your consciousness before you just start taking psychedelics willy-nilly.
Right.
So hopefully that answered your question. I mean, there's so many nuances there.
No, that's fantastic. I mean, that's fantastic. I mean, that ties into the book, The Body Keeps the Score. You go through these experiences and these traumas, and it gets trapped inside you because so many of us, and myself included, so many of us don't spend the time to go on an 11-day retreat or even just take 15 minutes and just like, what am I feeling? What am I sensing? Have I worked through this process? I was at a seminar recently, and we went like a mindset course within the seminar, and this lady came up and she helps men and women go through their feelings. And she was talking about polar bears. And she said when polar bears, and I hope I don't butcher this, but polar bears, when they get sedated, like if we have to do something on them, where we tranquilize them, whatever, it's a traumatic experience for them. When they come out of that, they'll shake violently, just shake, super violent, and they'll freak out a little bit. But then after a few minutes, they calm down and they go back to their family like nothing ever happened. And it's like the processing, the going through those emotions and not hiding from it, because it manifests, like you said, in sickness, pain in the body, whatever. And I just think that's super fascinating. And I've never done it, so now I'm very intrigued, and I didn't know they were free.
Well, they're donation basis. Somebody's paying for them.
Well, yeah. So I want to be, Thank you for clarifying.
And to expand on that topic, because that's a very deep, topic that you're talking about the polar bear, shaking that off. We see an animal or we see a barking animal, we know something's up, right? And so, but in our society, we gaslight people's emotions to the point where we call it toxic masculinity now. And what that does is it marginalizes the alarm, the nature's alarm, right? Men traditionally know what's on the horizon to eat and what could potentially eat them or the tribe or penetrate the perimeter, etc. And so we have this innate element inside of us. And basically we're being gaslit right now that nothing's going on. There's no food in the soil. There's no poison in the food. There's no poison in the soil, the air, the water. That's all chemtrails are a conspiracy theory. Oil and the petrodollar will always be here, right? Even if you study the history of fiat currencies, and so which have no intrinsic value ultimately. And so no one's free until we're all free. And right now we're all enslaved in a little mini Hunger Games based on these magical pieces of paper that keep changing its value. And so there's layers to the mind control, the psychological warfare, the gaslighting, the lying, the cheating, the stealing. In the Bible, it says in the end times, we'll be dealing with, inverted truth, where truth will be lies and lies will be truth. Well, we're living in that time right now. The food's been poisoned. The children have been poisoned. The soil's been poisoned. The air, the water. These are the common human heritage. These are the commons. These are part of all of us. And we're just poisoning everything. And so this, to me, is just humanity's great awakening. This is all a catalyst for where we're going, which if you study Vedic traditions, they talk about the Kali Yuga or the Golden Age, right? These are seasons that we go through in consciousness. And so we are expanding. We're going to the next level. And if you don't think that is true, I mean, just look at the Mayan, the Egyptian, and the Incan temples, and the other temples that are in Turkey and even in the United States, the Serpent Mount. There's a level of consciousness here that has not been explained. I didn't study the Mayan temples when I was in school. I didn't even know they existed. As soon as I knew that there was pyramids in Mexico, I flew right down there and saw them for my own eyes. Wow. And so there's something else that meets the commercial eye than we're just being sold on these commercial conduits.
Oh, dude. Yeah. 100%. What do you think? Do you think that it's money? It's all money driven, or do you think that there's something even deeper than that? Because I'll tell you my opinion, and maybe this will give you I know you'll share your thoughts regardless, but my opinion is it's good and evil. On an umbrella scale, it's good and evil, got masked under the idea of money. We want power, we want whatever. But really, because I'm a believer, and I don't know what your stance is on that, but as a Christian, I look at it as like, this is good and evil, and we are living it out. You read the Bible, and it's like, it's abundantly, it couldn't be more clear that this is literally what's happening.
Yeah, I think all the ancient texts have tried to explain the human condition. There's a through line, an axiom through line through the ancient texts, and brotherly love is at the cornerstone, right? So, and the religions, the Abrahamic religions, especially, there's been, more wars in the name of Christ and all of that stuff. So the religions and the men who run that, and the Pharisees and the people that occupy the churches and all that stuff, there's levels to the confusion that has been taken from the word of God that have come through some of the prophets, right? So let's just put that out there. And so I don't like to get caught up in linguistics. Language can be an obstruction and an abstraction, right? So, and I prefer to have a direct conduit to the divine, right? A direct connection to the divine. But in saying that, there are axioms, there are truths for way of living. I like the Taoist point of view, yin and yang, right? Masculine, feminine, inhalation, exhalation, catabolic, anabolic. You can't have one without the other. My mentor, Paul Chek, likes to say, Luke Skywalker needs a Darth Vader, right? Otherwise, we don't exist.
Yeah.
God, consciousness, unconditional love, whatever you want to call it, doesn't exist in a vacuum. It can't experience itself. We are all the essence of the divine. We
Yeah.
are all part of the creation. Paul Chek does an amazing job. I had a video before my YouTube channel was taken down called The Dark Side of God. It's on Rumble. You can find it on there, and I highly recommend anyone that's into health and fitness or rehabilitation. Paul Chek is a living master.
Oh,
And
he's great.
so,
He's great.
and this goes philosophically very, very deep. You know, there's the literal understanding, which is the first layer of understanding of any religious text. Then it goes all the way down. He breaks it down to 4 levels deep into the spiritual realm where you're being guided by that direct connection. And so I think that, you know, it's a good idea to have a broader philosophical understanding than get caught up in the literal translation, especially if you're getting that translation through another man or you know, even through the words, etc. It's like trying to learn how to swim by reading it in a book, or
Right.
learning how to surf or ride a bike, reading it from a book. You got to get out there and ride the bike. You got to get out there and meet God, however you end up doing that, whether it's a Vipassana course or a psychedelic experience or a near-death experience, etc. And
Yeah.
so I like the Taoist point of view. There are 2 forces guiding us on this planet, right? There's 2 forces governing us. And so, and the ancient sages have always said, walk the middle path, the razor's edge. That's where the balance is. And the Zen masters, they said, chop wood, carry water. No, carry water, chop wood before enlightenment, carry wood, chop water after enlightenment, or however it goes. I just bastardized that. Bottom line is whether you're enlightened or you're not, you still got to wake up every day, brush your teeth, cook some meals, wipe your butt, and carry on,
Yeah.
right? Regardless of whatever spiritual high horse you think you're on, right? And there's also connection, right? I'm sure you could admit, Kyle, some days you have a direct connection with God, right? And some days you fall off the train. You're like, fuck, how did I get here? Right?
100%.
And,
100%.
you know, you lose your cool or you get out of balance, basically. And
Mm.
so I think it's just a danger zone for any of us to get on our spiritual high horse and be like, well, I have arrived. Because the universe and God's going to connect you to higher and higher levels. Let me just put it in this terms, because my meditation teacher used to call, you know, total disillusionment of your material source. Through meditation, you go in through this process of bunga, total disillusionment of your consciousness and the material realm that's vibrating at, you know, 23 zeros, like trillions and trillions of seconds. You're vibrating. Your atoms and molecules are vibrating. And so you go into total dissolution. I've had some of that taste in a psychedelic experience.
Yeah.
And my friend just went through it. An old school friend of mine in Miami, he owns nightclubs. And we both shared the Vipassana experience many, many years ago, 20 years ago. He recently sat one of these 10 days and he was not in the mood. He almost left. And then on day 7, he goes into complete dissolution, full enlightenment, direct connection to the divine. He could have been in there for 5 minutes, but it could have seemed like 500 years, right? This is what you hear about psychedelic experiences as
Yeah.
well. And he
Yeah.
was just in there. And Goenka, the teacher, he talks about this. Whether you go into full dissolution, bunga, right? And then you're still coming back.
Yeah.
You're still in the present. Now what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Right?
Right. Right. How are you going to use it?
And his daughter needs attention, and he's got to drive home from the retreat and all that stuff. So it's just like, you are yin and yang. You are a complete spiritual being on the quantum realm that's living in multi dimensions all over the universe. And then you are this person here right now. And how can you hold that level of consciousness that you are the sum total of the all in all moments, everywhere,
Right.
forever and
Right.
ever, infinity? So this is deep philosophical shit. And this is what gets me a little bit ticked off. when you start talking to people that are into some type of religious concept, and I get it, and that's great. However, they're stuck on like, it's got to be this way. And if you don't, this is one of the problems I have with the Christians. I have a direct connection. And then they tell me, well, how do you know that's not a demon? Or you practice yoga and that's devil worship. And I'm like, hey, slow down, guys. Slow down. That's a little bit of a literal, that's a literal interpretation of something that's so much more vast. Because we are not just the literal, we are the sum total of all, of everything. Infinity. Anyways.
No, I love that. I'm intrigued because as I said, I'm a believer, but I'm always so fascinated about these conversations because, and I have a lot of these conversations with my friends. Actually, I'm going to bring on an apologist soon. A theologian who's in it, right? Knows way more than I do, and I want to ask him these questions, like these things you're saying, because these are things that I wrestle with too. It's like finding that balance, that yin and that yang, what's literal, what's not literal, what's black, white, what's gray, like how do you navigate this and grow, because I think there's so much more than a lot of us are aware of. I mean, you're blowing my mind with the things you're sharing right now, and I'm loving it. Have you ever had a conversation with like someone who's like a theologian and had these conversations at all? What was that like, if you did?
I haven't, and I'd love to. And again, I'm no big scholar or anything. I'm a direct experience guy, right?
Yeah.
I'm a man walking the earth. I have plenty of intelligence, but I'm not necessarily book smart. I saw that Billy Carson got ripped a new butthole by this historic theologian, and I think that's fantastic. And again, I recommend everyone go back to The Dark Side of God, which is on Rumble with Paul Chek. It's a fascinating discussion on the layers of understanding of the spiritual texts. And ultimately, you have to have that communion. There's a great comedian on Joe Rogan in the last couple of years. I remember seeing it, and he was a complete atheist. It's one of his skinny buddy friends. I forget what his name was. But he's a complete atheist. And during the Christmas break or something, he went down to Peru and he drank the ayahuasca and he came back as a total believer.
Wow.
I also want to talk about this in language, right? So the etymology of language, nut, which comes from nutrition, also comes from the word nux, which is light, right? So it's the collection of biophotons into the nutrition, and then we take that light into our body. Christos, this is the light, right? Jesus Christ. You can also watch the movie Zeitgeist from 2007 that breaks down the religions from also that connects all the pagan astrology to the story of Christ. Also the psychedelic, the mushrooms, red and white, ties the whole Santa Claus into the Christmas story as well. So, and these stories, my understanding is they've been intertwined to say the same basic things. We are all light. If you're looking at matter of what's happening, I do believe it says it in Genesis, light and sound is a component of light. And you can speak into existence, into the matter, and this is the creation principle or the manifestation principle. Sound affects matter. The Wright brothers wanted to fly like an eagle, and everybody said that they were crazy, and now we just take it for granted that planes go overhead, every 5 minutes here.
Right, yeah.
So, nux, light, Christos, light, consciousness, biophotonic light, energy from the sun, the source of all life on the planet. The sun, right, is lowest in December 25th or the equinox and starts to rise again, right, after the equinox, right? So there's all these, and I don't claim to know everything, but if I'm watching The Mystery of Life and I'm paying attention, I'm like, in language, and language affects matter, and this is how we create who we are and the consciousness, and then the energy from the sun is converted through photosynthesis into chlorophyll. Chlorophyll has the same exact molecular match, but there's an electron transfer of magnesium from the greens of the earth into the hemoglobin, which is your blood. So there's an exact match whether you eat the plants or whether you eat the herbivores that eat the plant. The cows and the grass. That's why grass fed is so important, because it has the omega-3 6s and 9 balances. Omega-3s are anti-inflammatory. 3s and 6s and 9s are high inflammatory, PUFAs, polyunsaturated fatty acids. And so we get completely out of balance, and whoever's designing the food supply knows this, and then they want to turn the human being off and then need them on a subscription model of drugs for the rest of their life, which is good for business, right?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
but you start reverse engineering, and it's just like, give me the sunlight, baby.
That's
Give me
it.
this. If I'm a human plant, right, and this is my spiritual spacesuit housing my soul, going through the physical realm and what's going on, then give me the light, baby. So whether you call that Christ, and then they gave him the name Jesus, and then that's been changed because his name was Yeshua, it's like, all right, what layer are we on? Because I've got, there's the Jesus Christ church down the street, and it's all new aged, and like they've got lights and hip hop music for the young kids to come in, and like that's their version of Jesus Christ, right? Then my version of Jesus Christ is the light, right? Is the true light. And how much light can I get into my photovoltaic cells, my mitochondria, to activate the energy that's animating me in the physical realm? Because I am a spiritual being having a physical connection. And through the physical connection, in the yin and the yang, the dark and the light, I find out who I am. Well, I grew up on the street when I was younger. I used to steal my food for survival. Now I can't lie, cheat, or steal whatsoever. It's outside of the context of who I am. And I don't know who I am if I'm at the barrel of a gun or my child's at a barrel of a gun. Could I lie, cheat, and steal then? Probably, right? And so understanding who we are in time and space and doing the best we can. And the stories of Jesus, he was persecuted. Other people were persecuted or cast out of society, right? And then this was their rite of passage, soul's journey, awakening trip, right? Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl, living in the Holocaust. So whatever takes us back to God, I like what Ram Dass said, we're all walking each other back home, right? All roads lead to God, ultimately. So I think if we free up our mind and consciousness, we'll also free up our brothers and sisters, because again, more wars have been started in the name of God with Abrahamic religions than anything really else, right? And if we could just, come together on air, water, soil, food, water, shelter, and fire are the 4 human needs. And technology produces that for us now. If we can come back around the fire, the black man, the red man, the white man, and the yellow man come back around the fire. It was prophesized a long time ago that this would happen, and I do believe this time is now. To come back around the fire on what matters most, we can live in peace and harmony. I postulate. This is what I postulate. And then food is free, and we don't need money, and we can live on the gift economy, and we can have free energy as Tesla created, and we can teach people how to take care of the instrument. The body has 2 pumps, the heart and the lymph, and it has 2 filters, or 2 systems of filters, the kidneys and the liver. And so it's a good idea to start pumping natural food in as fuel. And then cleaning the blood with fasting. The Essenes taught Jesus how to fast, to purify the vessel, and to go back to the zero and know that we have the power and essence of God inside of us. So,
100%. Well, my cynical point of view, and I 100% want you to shoot me down here, but my cynical point of view is that in theory that's great, that we could all come together, but I just don't see it happening. I think that the elements of human nature will just always be there. And seriously, I want you to shoot me down if you don't agree, but this is my point of view at 32 years old, is that human nature will always be there. And as long as human nature is there, there's going to be people that are hungry for power, that are greedy, that don't care, they want to get one over on you. And so as much as it is possible, 100%, I mean, we're seeing it with what's going on in the government. Like, you make a decision that's the right, and it's better for the whole. Like, it's not hard. You just make a good decision, don't do what's wrong. But as long as there's human beings, there will always be corruption. And I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but that's my point of view currently.
Kyle, my thoughts on that are very simple, and I do believe it's biblical, right? Where there's no vision, the people will perish. So, you're online. It's challenging to be an entrepreneur and monetize what you love to do. Clearly, you love what you do. Like, I don't see you as a Lambo bro that's just doing this for marketing purposes, etc. And so, however, you do need some of those marketing tools to go out there and serve your clients and serve the greater populace. Like, I get a really good feeling from you. Like, I'd trust you, right? And so, but there's a whole subset of people that are just following trends back to that Hunger Games situation, trying to make these magical pieces of paper using technology, which is very powerful, and then lying, cheating, and stealing, robbing people blind. I got burned by Andy Elliott, the sales trainer. Took $50,000 and did not deliver exactly what he said. Then stole my IP and published it on a website to deceive others. Right, and then he goes to the local church to hide down, like, oh, I'm born again, and he did this in Oklahoma, and there was 600 pages of 22 counts of fraud. Turned states as evidence, became a snitch, and walked free. Right, so this is the guy, and I'm doing my best to forgive. Right, let go and forgive. At the same time, warning other young Padawans like yourself that may get bamboozled by these types. And you're starting to see this with Gary Brecka and Grant Cardone. Again, these sales tactics, they're not really 10x health, right? I know two people that got peptides from them and ended up into the emergency room because they got the wrong size syringes. They injected, a month's worth of medicine in a week or whatever. Two people, right? And he talks about that on JT Fox's podcast when Gary Brecka talked about his $100 million lawsuit. So this is the bamboozlement that's going on the internet. People lying, cheating, stealing. And then, how do you protect it? Well, I like to be vocal to let people know that you can have health. I'll be 60 this year. You can have holistic health without drugs.
Yes.
Without peptides and, $100,000 machines. You can get it from sunlight. Everything that I teach is basically free. Currently, it takes money to get organic food through the marketplace, right? And to get water filtration systems or water collection systems. It's going to cost you a little bit of money. But walking's free, sleep's free, sunlight's free, grounding's free, right? Breathing is free, optimizing your breathing mechanics and reprogramming your diaphragm. So my point is my job is to work on, what does the Bible say? Forgiveness, right? Gratitude, forgiveness, gratitude for what is, and forgiveness for what was. And so I have to release, being ripped off, burned in this industry, and also hold the vision. I postulate, just like the Wright brothers wanting to fly like an eagle, or Steve Jobs wanting to create a handheld computer in every man's hand so that man could change the world. Thank you, Steve Jobs, right? Yeah. So we're all using these things right now, dreaming the impossible dream. Steve Jobs is a visionary, right? The Wright brothers were visionaries. Where there's no vision, the people will perish. I do believe that human beings can live in harmony, and we can use the metric, the scientific metric of biomimicry, to create sustainable, equitable systems on planet Earth. So biomimicry is a spider at room temperature, aqueous solution, materials from its local environment, will manufacture something 5 times the strength of steel. Coral reefs are the same thing. So we can align with nature. Nature has everything that we need, free energy, etc., and live harmoniously with the earth. I postulate that. I don't think that we have to drop bombs on other people, conquer their lands. I do believe that we can have peace. I think the Native American Indians used to have the peace pipe. Now, I know there was tobacco because tobacco is a sacred plant, and I've done enough 5-MeO DMT, and I know there's other DMT plants. I'm curious if it was DMT back in the day,
Right.
because that is something that will transport you. You want to talk about God and the Word of God and all these things? Try 5-MeO DMT. You're going to meet God like that.
I have heard that. I've heard it's pretty wild.
Well, and
You know,
a
it's
lot of
funny.
people. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, there's a story. There's a story on Psychedelics. There was this guy. So I was watching this channel, and it's a Christian channel, but these guys like telling their testimonies and stuff. And one of the dudes that was telling his testimony was talking about doing psychedelics, and so he was already a believer at this point. He had gone through some stuff, and he said he was like, you know what, I want to take some shrooms. He's like, I feel like I'm in a better place now, and I want to do this. And he kind of knew like he shouldn't, based on if you're going to go off like what the Bible says, stay sober minded. He was like, I shouldn't do it, but I'm going to do it. So he says he takes it, and it shot him into a realm where he was absolutely petrified. And he said what happened was he saw God. Like he didn't see God, but he felt God breathing into his lungs and breathing out. And like he could literally see like every breath he was taking, it was God breathing into him and breathing out. And then he said he had this experience where he kind of goes into this area. I don't know what he said, but like Jesus walks up to him and he goes, he kind of just puts his hand on his shoulder because he was terrified. Like he was so terrified. And he puts his hand on his shoulder and he's like, hey, let's not do that again. Like that's all he said to him. And then he came out of it and he was good. And he's like, I'll never do that again. But to your point, like there is something there. And I don't know if I would ever do it because honestly, it terrifies me to experience. But there's something there. Something happens. And I'm intrigued by it.
Well, it's not for the faint of heart. It's not for everyone either. And it really depends on where their consciousness is. And remember, your psychedelic experience is definitely going to be intertwined with all of your mimetic viruses, all of your ideas, all of your upbringing. The thing that psychedelics works as an incredible tool is that it dissolves illusions, stories that we tell ourselves that may or may not be true or may not be true in the moment. Like something that worked in biblical times may not have as much application in current times.
Yeah.
And so, and also some of the stories that we told around the fire or in religious texts were there to protect us and there to help us. I think some of the religious texts, they allow multiple women, right? To have multiple women to make children. And I think there was times when maybe there was a problem with population and they needed more children. And so there you go. It's A-okay. And then there's other parts of the Bible that talks, about, having that man and woman connection and I think just a deeper level of honesty. And my experience with sexual debauchery and premarital sex is that's a dead end road. Unwanted pregnancies, abortions, real big problems. So I definitely think the mixing of the sexual energies warrants attention and good guidance. Otherwise, it's going to bring a lot of pain in your life. And remember, yin and yang. So if you're getting pain, right, that can bring you back to, the opposite of pain is joy. And so having a child, that's so joyful. Grandchild, that's so joyful. And so when we understand that, again, we reach towards balance. And how do you know up if you don't know down? How do you know the heights of joy if you don't know the depths of pain? And so oftentimes these are catalysts for our own soul's awakening. Mm-hmm. Now at almost 60, I've been sober. I mean, I've been celibate for like 4 years. And even after my wife and I got divorced, then we briefly got back together again. During that time, at 50, I was just like, woo, free lunch. I was like, whoa, let's Bumble, Tinder. I'm free again, baby. And I realized there ain't no free lunch. Yeah. Emotionally, entanglement, there's no free lunch. So I think that consciousness around everything, warrants our attention. If we want peace, if we want harmony, I don't eat gluten right now because I know I'll get a 4-day hangover. Alcohol is definitely not my highest and best choice. I
Yeah.
realize that.
Same.
I got a DUI in 2016, and I wasn't. And before that, I sobered up in 1999. And so I just realized that's more problems that I want to deal with, right?
Yeah.
And so, and life is, a series of choices. And so, and we learn by going through some of the pain.
Yeah.
I am devoutly spiritual human being, very super creative. When I was younger, I didn't think I was creative at all. And spiritual, I might have had some Troy Casey heart and soul. Like I've always been pretty cool, but I was off the deep end with the debauchery, right? Sex, drugs, and rock and roll, baby.
Yeah.
And so it all comes down to awareness. And I just postulate that we can raise the consciousness to create peace and harmony. And I have seen the vision that humanity makes it towards peace and harmony. Instead of the opposite, we're living in inverted times right now. And so, dropping bombs on people for oil, this is the norm. Go enslaving African children for lithium and cobalt and the other things that make our electronics. This is the norm. I'm using one of these electronics right now. We are all part of the problem. Therefore, we are all part of the solution.
Yeah, that's convicting when you think about it like that.
Hey, let me also say this. No one's free until we're all free. There is no other. So the time we point the finger, we're really, if we are all God and we are all the sum total of the all, then there is no real other in the quantum realm. And so, and Rabbi Hillel taught Jesus, we are all one or none. And what are we realizing on this planet? Just because we're Americans and we got new cars and cell phones, and then we've got all these war-torn countries that we created through globalism and all this other stuff in the military-industrial complex. We are all one or none. No one's free until we're all free.
Yeah, agreed. One last question on the psychedelics, and then I want to ask you another very pertinent. It's a very question that's been on my mind since I've known we were doing this podcast. So the first question is, with psychedelics, if you've had a bad experience on psychedelics, is it guaranteed that you'll have another bad experience on psychedelics?
No, nothing's guaranteed. I would postulate no. Again, psychedelics are not right for all people at all times. And especially if you have imbalances. And we're all bipolar. So it just depends on how far out of the spectrum you are. And you could be bipolar from being around fluorescent lights and eating food coloring, right? The children that get ADHD, they're sitting them in classrooms with fluorescent lights and also Wi-Fi and all sorts of discordant energies. So, so people can get out of balance. Ask the question again, Kyle.
Just if you're guaranteed to have another bad experience, if you've had one bad experience, are you more likely to have another bad experience?
Not necessarily, but that trepidation, it could be self-imposed. But here's what the shamans in the Amazon say. The negative experience or the walk through hell. First of all, if you find yourself walking through hell, keep walking. Keep going, right? Because as my meditation teacher said, everything rises and passes away. Everything. That's the vibration of the universe. And so when you go through hell in an experience, then life becomes gravy because you've already been there. Your biggest fears came up to your consciousness. A lot of people roll around in our nervous system. We have so much fear and trepidation. And sometimes we're hypochondriacs, and sometimes we just have fear and worries. And this is the vibration on the quantum level that we send out. And what happens is you're thinking about that, meditating about that, and then that comes back into your life, and then it's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
So usually, if you can go through hell, then everything else is gravy. You're like, shit, I already went there. The Egyptian book of the living and dying, or the Tibetan book of living and dying, says, how do you know the heights of joy if you don't know the depths of pain? Right? And so this is the dualistic aspect of the universe. So you could have that experience, or maybe that you have too much unstableness in the mind that psychedelics might not be your best tool.
Right.
The other thing that I'd like to say about that is I did ibogaine recently, twice in the last couple of years at an amazing center. It's a medical facility. They work with heroin and opiate addiction. But more importantly than that, there's been a study with 360 Navy SEALs, and they improved every health marker and every lifestyle marker, I do believe, like by 60% just on one journey.
Wow.
Right. And so the study was published in Nature recently, the last year or two. And the scientist was on Joe Rogan and I do believe Rich Roll podcast. And so ibogaine, my first time that I did that, I had 8 hours of Hitler, hell, lynchings, slice open the arteries, blood goes out, blood pressure drops, dead, dying, decapitation, lynchings, like 8 hours of this shit, and just, I was like, holy shit. And what that told me was that was living inside my nervous system.
Yeah.
This is what I was carrying around in my day to day, right? This is the potential fire that I have living in me. And I've been a pretty fiery human being since I've been on the planet. And I didn't live through those experiences,
Right.
but it's in my neurology. And if you listen to the biology of belief from Dr. Bruce Lipton,
Yeah.
This stuff is inside of us. These polypeptides are, my grandfather could have been in World War I, World War II. This, head chopping off type of situation, bayonet into the heart and lungs, this could be in my neurology. And there I am taking this ibogaine, and miracles have happened in the last couple of years after going through this experience. And I highly recommend, if you know anybody that's suffering from addiction or trauma and they have the capital to go to this medical facility, it's about $10,500 for 7 days, $10,000 to $15,000 to go down there. And I experienced miracles. I've been there twice in the last couple of years. The center I went to was called Beyond. It's the same place that the Wolf of Wall Street went to. He had a Suboxone addiction. And so, the potential is miracle. And again, ibogaine is very powerful. Ayahuasca dredged my soul. I would just be in the Amazon puking and shitting and wow, just emotional garbage coming out of me. I did 30 ceremonies in the span of 8 years in the Amazon rainforest, and
wow.
They're tools, man. They are tools, and they are extremely powerful. Do not take them. They're not party drugs.
Yeah, the reason I was asking, it was selfishly why I was asking, is because so when I smoked weed for the first time when I was, I don't know, in college, and my buddy and I, the plan was, hey, we're gonna smoke some weed. It's your first time. We're just gonna chill afterwards. We'll eat some cookout. Like it's gonna be easy, dude. It's gonna be so fun. And I was like, all right, F it, let's do it. So I got some weed and I smoked and I took a hit out of a bong. And dude, the worst, literally the worst experience of my life led into about 8 to 10 months of like PTSD after. In the moment, I was 100% convinced that I had died and gone to hell. And like where I was in that moment was hell. And so I experienced like the hopelessness, the helplessness, the stuckness, couldn't move. I had this thought going on in my head that was like, everything you've ever known is gone. Everything you've ever known is over and over and over. And so when I came out of it, I remember I was crying hysterically. And I was so excited that I could move. And then the rest of the night was awful. But for months after that, it was like wrestling with like, what was that? Where am I at now? How do I get back into normalcy? And to your point earlier, it was like life went on. Like I was still in college. I had an internship. I still was like training for CrossFit, dealing with all this in my head. It was like, how do I figure this out? And eventually like music really helped me. Working out really helped me and things like that. But that's why I ask you, it's like, I'm intrigued by it, but I'm also terrified. I'm like, I do not want to experience that again at all.
Well, I postulate from the story you're telling me that you were struggling with your own ideas, that this is bad. The same can be said with the Catholic girl that went to college and fucked the hockey team in 1985, and now she has cancer because she thinks she's a bad person, right? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Your belief system of like, oh, premarital sex is bad, and you know, you grow up Catholic, and that's in your nervous system, it's in your belief system, again, back to the biology of belief, and later on that manifests as dysfunction.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so I love Laird Hamilton's definition of God when Paul Chek asked him in an interview. And Laird Hamilton is the biggest big wave surfer in the world. I mean, that guy lives and wrestles with God. 100-foot wave, you're either going to make it or you are going to die, right?
100%.
And so and he has been pummeled down in to the bottom of the ocean and can't get back up. Like, he has probably met God more than anyone, right? So his interpretation is, you know, what's your definition of God? And his answer was, what is happening right now? That's it.
Wow. I love that. But it's like it's figuring out how to embody that at all times too.
Correct. And that is the journey. But hey, look, if you're hearing this conversation, you're awake to it at one level or another, or you're inspired to go to the Amazon to drink ayahuasca or sit a Vipassana course or whatever, or you're just listening to this, you're going to start thinking different. You're going to start questioning your beliefs. Philosophically, I've done my best to not have too many beliefs as I go through this world, right? Like, I believe that we should have clean air, water, and soil. But here's the newsflash, Kyle. We don't.
We definitely do not.
We don't. Right?
We
So
do not.
now how are you going to navigate that? Are you going to be a victim and go crawl in your bed and be like, I'm a sick autoimmune, forever doomed? Fuck all that shit. Let me learn a bunch of cleanse and detox methodologies. Let me meditate. Let me rise above the matter, which is the final frontier, is mind over matter. Jesus walked on water, right? The final frontier is where you're above all of this. You understand it. You're in this realm to experience. You know, the ultimate is understanding, right? Accepting your death so you can live a life worth living, leave a legacy. But the ultimate understanding is there is no death. Go do a big psychedelic experience, something like 5-MeO DMT. You know that you're going to go meet God. You can be as afraid as everything before you have that experience, and then you go through it, and your consciousness completely shifts in that moment. And so, is your belief like these things are bad? These things are. It's just an experience. It's the same thing of dying. The idea is to be conscious and to walk into the next dimension. There is no death.
Yeah. That's this is the last thing I'll say, and then I want to ask you another question. That largely conflicts with the Christian ideology, and I know you know that. Like, in the sense of.
But wait a second. Didn't Jesus come back?
And that's where it becomes really tricky. It's like when you wrestle with this, it's like the death is. Man, we could go on forever, and I don't want to keep opening up cans of worms, but I love what we're chatting about. But the idea is, where I'm at currently, from my understanding, as an unbeliever, when you die, like, you die. Like, that's real death. That's what makes death scary, is because you walk into hell, like you're going to hell, separation from a God. As a believer, there is no death, because you go from death, or so you go from life to life, eternal life, and you have eternity with Jesus, right? And that's where the fear is. And so, as a believer, there shouldn't be any fear of death. Like, to your point, like, there shouldn't be any fear of death, because when I die, I'm going to meet Jesus. So in this life, whenever I face, this is the worst I'm ever going to face. But if you're not a believer, the worst you face in this life isn't the worst you're going to face. It's what comes after. And so that's where my mind is currently as I'm wrestling with my own beliefs and spirituality. I'm not sure what your thoughts are on that.
Well, I think whatever you take to the grave or the spirit world, is the sum total of your thoughts, your energetics, whatever your soul is living and breathing, right? So, and again, this gets pretty deep philosophically, and where I get snagged talking with a lot of Christians is they get pretty literal, and everyone's levels of understanding. That's why I think, it's a good idea to have a conversation with a good theologian that maybe is well versed. I like the guy that Billy Carson talked to because he
great.
seemed not only well versed but pretty open ended. I don't make any claims. I haven't read the religious texts. I got some pretty good assumptions. I could definitely be wrong. And until any theologian has had my experience of the psychedelic experiences that I had, then you're only guessing as well. And you can read the Bible all day long, but I want to talk to someone who's had direct communion with God. And the Bible is full of stories like that. In fact, the Bible is written by prophets that have downloaded that information directly from God, supposedly. Right? Even though maybe some of those books were written long after their death. So, again, direct communion and someone else's literal translation translated multiple times. You've ever played the game of telephone? It doesn't come back as the same, right? So there's always interpretations, especially when you're shifting languages from Aramaic.
And there was some dirty, like from my understanding as well, from what I've learned from people, there was some dirty things that happened. I mean, there like
Constantine, bro.
100%. So and that's like, again, that's where me as a young man, like fighting to understand what's real, what's not real. It's like, where do you get the right research? How do you figure this? Like, I'm very much so. It sounds like we're in a very similar place where it's like we're constantly just like figuring this thing out. And I'm genuinely trying to search for good quality knowledge. And that's one reason why I really wanted to do this podcast with you. It's like, just want all the information I can get and try to sort this thing out.
Well, my understanding, first of all, you're on a spiritual journey. So I don't know if you really ever sort it out, or if you do, you're still chopping wood.
Yeah, right.
You're carrying water. But here's the thing I was going to say. I forgot what it was. Do we ever figure it out?
If you can't,
what were we talking about?
Well, just figure, like, balancing, just figuring it out, like the spirituality. If you can't remember, I've got a follow-up question that I'll hammer away.
Oh God, I was going to say something. I just lost my train of thought.
You're good. Well, I'll segue into the next one. If it comes to you, let me know.
Yeah, okay.
But the next question I have for you, and this is something I have to understand, so please enlighten me, is urine therapy. Dude, that has rocked my world since I've seen you like talking about it on your social media. And I want to, like, what's the premise behind it? Because I know it's going to shock a lot of people.
I'm going to tell you that right now, but Jesus said that you can have what I have and more, is my understanding. I do believe it either says somewhere in the Bible or the Gospel of Thomas.
No, yeah, he does. That's what he says. He says, you will do these things and more. You have the faith of a mustard seed. You want to move a mountain, mountain will move. So yes.
Okay. So that's the Son of God, supposedly, the story. The Son of God, which ultimately we are also children of God. So he said, you can have what I have and more. He walked on water, healed people at will, broke bread, and fed the world, all of that stuff. So if that is true, that's where you want to go. You don't want to just subjugate your energy and defer to a deity. Then you can have what he has and more. So back to the mind over the matter.
Yeah.
Right? How can we, what would Jesus do? WWJD, right? And keep coming back to that. And I do believe that that's where we're headed. I like to say this, that the second coming of Christ is when we all rise up to that level, right? that level of forgiveness, healing, etc. And I do believe that that's what we're going through, is the
I,
second coming of Christ.
I honestly do. I actually do too. I think so. I mean, in Revelation, it says that. It says there will be a time of peace. And to your point earlier, it really seems like we're moving into a time of peace with some of the things that are getting laid out. It's like, wow, this is actually what we've been wanting all along. And other countries are like, yeah, this makes sense. And it's like, we're kind of moving into a time of peace. And Revelation lays that out clearly. There will be a time of peace. And then it says after that, that's when the end comes. So, I mean, that's a whole nother can of worms, and no one knows when that'll be. But
the end is just the beginning.
Exactly. It is just the beginning.
Look, I'm living example. My brother died of a heroin overdose in 2007. I was on my way to the Amazon. I was going to shoot a documentary. I was going to bring him down there because he had a problem with heroin. And that was 2007. When I got back from the jungle, he had died in an overdose. My son was born a month later. And I do believe that my son, I don't believe, I feel that my son is the reincarnation of my brother, or the energetic soul of my brother. I've called him my brother's name. He reminds me of my brother. My stepfather, who has never met him, has also called him my brother's name.
Wow.
It's just kind of weird. I'm not trying to say it is or I believe that.
Right.
This
right.
is something that I feel.
Yeah.
My daughter's connection, I feel like I'm so deeply connected to her. My ex-wife, the soul connection, and the shenanigans that we went through in the divorce. Like, you ever hear about divorce? Like, people lie, cheat, and steal, call the cops, lie.
Oh, yeah.
Just, it's like all's fair in love and war, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I'm doing my best, forgiveness, right, which is in the Bible, to have forgiveness and understand her. And she claims that, she's Christian as well. But she definitely lied to the police about multiple things and stole the bank account, stole some other things. So the bottom line is I do believe I have a very, very deep soul connection with her. And whether it was past lives or whatever the case may be, she was like, I'm going to do some heinous shit to you. So you get to forgive me in this high level of spirituality.
Yeah.
This very, like, if it wasn't for her, the work I've done on myself in the last 5 years and being dragged through the mud and being robbed and all that stuff, if it wasn't for her, I would have never gone through this.
Yeah.
And I just like being ripped off by Andy Elliott for $50,000, which, by the way, is a lot of money. If you take a man's money, you better fucking deliver on your promises.
Yeah.
And so, but what do I get to work with? I still get to work with forgiveness, right? I can't carry that burden. I was victimized. I'm a victim. I don't trust women. I don't trust people in business. No, because then so my job is to work towards forgiveness and whatever energy that comes on, right? And sometimes those wounds, they're too fresh, but there's layers to the game. I don't want to walk into my elder years being a bitter curmudgeon.
Well, that's what goes back to what you said earlier, with like the psychosomatic symptoms. You carry that stuff with you, and like it's going to manifest in some way, whether it's cancer or pain in your body or whatever. It's most likely going to manifest in some way physically. That's just not going to be enjoyable. Urine therapy.
You're
the
the golden elixir.
I have to know, because I love what you've said about it. There's like the stem cells, the micronutrients that are into it, and how people have been cured of these cancers that nothing else could cure. So what's going on there, and how'd you learn about that? We'll end on this, but I'm very fascinated.
So in 2017, I met a friend, and he taught me some breath work, and he'd read some yoga sutras as well, and he had testicular cancer, and he was a Swedish national, and he was living in Malibu, but he flew back to Sweden because the healthcare is free, and they gave him free chemo, and he was like 29 at the time. He was a young man.
Yeah.
And the doctors were like, oh, the chemo didn't work. We're going to have to take out your lymph nodes. And he was like, my lymph nodes? I think those are kind of important. So he went home and he said, I'm going to figure this out. And he came across urine therapy, looping your urine. So fasting on urine only, like continue to put it through the body. And there's some anecdotal books, J.W. Armstrong, The Water of Life. But he looped his urine for 3 weeks. And this is his story. It's not my story. I'm not making this up. This was the story I was told. Dr. P.P. Shivambu, I call him. He's in my book. I put him in my book, Ripped at 50. And so he went back to the doctors and they couldn't find the cancer. And they were dumbfounded. And they asked him what he did. And he told them, and they didn't believe him. And so, that was many years ago. And so that's the one anecdotal story I have on the cancer. I have not read J.W. Armstrong's book or the Vedic scriptures. I just heard about them through the grapevine. And in 2005, I'm called the certified health nut because I have tried many protocols that most people, Vipassana meditation, 10-day courses in silence, I could never do that.
Right.
Going to the Amazon to drink ayahuasca with the Indians, I couldn't do that. You take herbs, what is that? So for many years, juicing, fasting, all these things, you don't eat for how many days? So I became the certified health nut. So I heard about the Vedic lore on the urine therapy. And in 2005, I tried a cupful of it. And I was like, well, that wasn't that bad. And I actually liked it energetically. I was driving on a road trip to San Francisco from Los Angeles, and I didn't want to stop my car. So I peed in a cup and drank it. And lo and behold, I liked it. And I have done that since 2005. So what is it? 2025. That's 20 years. And so I don't talk about it from the perspective if it's good for you. I just share it on podcasts because it's been good for me.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's good for you, especially if you can't get over the mental hurdle. But the research shows that it's got stem cells, antibodies, antigens, cell salts, amino acids. Stem cells alone, people are going to faraway lands to get $10,000 worth of stem cells injections. Where are they getting it from? They're getting it from fetal tissue or umbilical cords. From what humans gave you those umbilical cords? Or is it from, was it circumcised penises from children? Like, did they give it willingly? Or like, where are you getting these body parts from, guys, to get these stem cells? Like, I don't want other people's stem cells. What about my stem cells? Yeah. And so, and not to mention, I don't need to fly anywhere. I can just drink it. And then the guy that cured himself of cancer, or so he says, he told me how to do aged urine and pee in a mason jar and then store it and let it ferment. And lo and behold, I work with Jonathan Otto, investigative journalist, Dr. Edward Group, very established medical doctor and naturopathic doctor. He owns a company called Global Healing. He's got excellent products, by the way. And so these guys are huge advocates, and they're finding blue hydrogels, neon blue lights inside people's blood, synthetic red blood cells. You want to talk about the Antichrist?
Yeah.
Look at that stuff.
Yeah.
And then look at the poison injections that we were sold the last 4 years, right? What about those? Mm-hmm. Is that where these nanobots and materials and hydrocells and nanotechnology and is that where it's coming from?
Maybe.
Well, what is Dr. Brian Artis, the frontline doctors that's fighting all this schmovid stuff?
Dude,
nicotine patches, venoms in the water, venoms in the injections, mRNA in the injections. What is this? Nanobots, nanotechnology? Well, lo and behold, they're number one if you are fucked on the spectrum of being fucked by the medical establishment or the poisons that are in our environment. Lo and behold, it looks like urine might be the cure-all for that, according to those guys, not me, guys. Right? Recognize the linguistic pattern over here. Yeah. According to Dr. Brian Artis and Edward Group and urinetherapy.com, the solution, if you are fucked and you're dying and you're screwed and you've been poisoned and injected, this might be the only solution for you.
That's crazy. And okay, two thoughts. One, when you tell somebody to do something hard, no one's going to do it, which is why the pharmaceutical industry does so well, because they sell it on easiness, right? Like even a 3-minute cold therapy. No one wants to do that. They'd rather take a pill to make themselves feel better and be healthier. So to tell someone to drink urine, you're like, oh no, that's disgusting. I would never, blah, blah, blah. But until someone's on their deathbed, like you just said, it's like, hey, well, this might be your only option. Then they do it and their eyes open and they're like, oh, so there is something to this. So I found that super fascinating. I had another thought, but I can't remember. But Brian Artis, back to your point, is fantastic. And when you tell people about all this stuff, like, you got to be careful who you talk to your people about this stuff, because they're like, at least in my experience, when I share it with some people, I'm labeled as the quack. And I'm like, well, you guys, please listen to me. Just look around. Is what I'm saying really that crazy?
Hold on here, Kyle. They may just crucify you.
As soon as isn't it interesting how it all just seems to go full circle?
You want enlightenment? How bad do you want it? You tell people where it's at, they may just kill you.
Yep.
Kill the messenger.
And you know, that's what's funny, man, is it's like, it's just so worth it. Oh, it says you're okay. Are you back to recording?
Yeah, somebody called me.
Okay, now you're back to recording. You had a call come in. All good, no worries. I'll splice it together. But what I was going to say is, it's just so worth it. Like, it's worth it to delve into this stuff and let people make fun of you and call you a quack and whatever, because if it makes you better and it makes you healthier, it makes you feel good, it makes you a better person, helps you look at people differently, more understanding, more forgiveness, you're healthier, it's like, why not? You know, if someone wants to call you a quack, just do it anyway, because eventually they might come to you and be like, hey, what did you do? Because I need help.
Well, at my age, I mean, look, guys my age that have all the money and burn themselves out, those are my perfect clients. I have a way for people to restore their health. I have many ways, not just the way. It's called holistic health. It's very simple, aligned with the nature principles. And so the older I get, the easier it is for me to do business, especially as I maintain my health and fitness. And so it's very, very, very simple. People are looking for that secret diet and exercise program. The fact of the matter is, you're going to get more mileage optimizing your sleep, having a walking practice, lowering stress levels, fine-tuning nutrition, than you are trying to outrun your bad diet or just get in the gym to solve all your problems. No, you're gonna solve a lot more problems with sleep, lowering stress levels. How about optimizing breathing mechanics, making sure that your diaphragm's optimized, making sure that you're a nose breather and not a mouth breather. Mouth breather, you're gonna elevate cortisol. Cortisol creates inflammation. Inflammation causes disease. So there's many holistic tools that you can look at. They're all natural. Before you start looking into cut, burn, and poison, or subscription models for your manhood, aka TRT.
Right. Yeah. And actually, I tell all my clients that, because I still work with a younger demographic, you know, that 25 to 35-year-old range, because that's how old I am. And some guys will come to me like, man, I want to get on TRT. I'm just not feeling energy. And it's like, okay, well, hold on. Have we optimized all of the other things first before we do that? And then you dive into it and they're not sleeping enough. They're not eating good. They're not even trying to lift heavy. So like, lifting heavy is a huge thing for optimizing testosterone, getting outside and getting sun, drinking clean, like all the things, right? You can do Tungat Lee, Shilajit, mixed boron, like all those things. And it's like, have we done that yet? Before you want to take this synthetic hormone, you got to be on the rest of your life. And if you get off of it, it's going to cause a lot of issues. Before we do that, let's look at this. And when I say that to them, they're like, all right, you're right.
Well, not only that, but we hear about people's Achilles tendon. You can snap tendons, ligaments, stuff like that, because it makes your tissues rigid and dries them out. So if you're looking at major injuries in life, sure, you can get jacked and rigid, but what is the potential side effects?
Yeah. Why? Like it just the benefits of it does not outweigh the cost. There's no shot. It just
Well,
doesn't, at least in my
here
mind.
I achieved what everybody wants: their six pack abs, being ripped at 50, without drugs. So if I can do it naturally, then everyone can do it. Did my team get you the digital copy of that and the audio version?
No, shoot it over, dude. I want to read it.
Oh yeah, yeah. We'll get that right out to you. You can get it on Amazon, um, and but yeah, we'll get it right out to you. And if people can't afford it, I'm happy to send them a Kindle version of it. And so you can get my 9 pillars of health, the curriculum that's in the book, all for free just by going to my website. It has the 9 pillars download.
No, that's awesome. Um, Also, that's a Versace photo if I've ever seen one. The cover of
The
that photo.
the guy who shot it was Steve Lyons. He was the top male model in the early 90s when I started. He did every major campaign, and then he turned photographer, did documentaries in Africa on the rhinos, etc. Anyhow, he shoots men like he wants to be shoot, like Greek gods.
Mm.
And he had a $48,000 Leica, and he shot that with it. There's no Photoshop. It can be blown up 10 stories tall with no pixelation.
Wow, that's incredible, dude. Well, you look great. And so, first of all, thank you for your time today. Seriously, thank you for your time. This was a real privilege for me. This is the first opportunity I've had to speak to someone of your caliber, right? Who's doing really amazing things, and you work with a lot of really great people, and you're so intelligent. So I'm really thankful that you were willing to come on. I don't say that lightly at all.
Thank you, Kyle, and I really feel that. I just leave you guys with this. My mission, regardless of what you think of me or any of my philosophies or practices, my mission is to raise human consciousness and change all systems on Earth. My vision is clean air, water, soil, and equitable systems for all mankind in my lifetime. We're here to get her done, save the planet, save humanity.
100%. Let's get her done. Where can people find you on social media? I'll tag it down below, but where can people find you?
At Certified Health Nut, at Certified Health Nut everywhere. Mr. Health Nut on X, and certifiedhealthnut.com, troycasey.com all day.
Love it, dude. All right, you guys. Thank you for tuning in. If you watched live, love that you tuned in and got to see this. We love you guys. And as always, keep moving forward.
God bless.
Boom.